Professor Lipton, I was wondering whether you had given any thought to the favor I asked of you. If you have decided to help me with the letter, I hate to rush you, but I have to have the paperwork turned in by the end of next week. Ah, Kyle, I assume you're referring to the letter of recommendation you asked me to write for the internship at the Metropolitan Zoo Veterinary Clinic, correct? Yes, sir. I know that several of your students have asked you about writing recommendations for the same internship and that you can only write one and... Well, what I'm trying to ask is there anything I can do to make my chances for the letter a little better? Are there any extracurricular assignments I can do? Or maybe I can assist you in the lab on my own time? Anything like that?
Now that you've done the assigned reading of The Jungle Book, you can understand why Rudyard Kipling was one of the most popular writers in English during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. And I assigned The Jungle Book because, out of his many works of both prose and verse, it is probably his most famous story. Can anyone tell me what Henry James, another famous and popular author of that period, had to say about Kipling?
Can I read it aloud? I have James's quote right here.
Sure, if you don't have it memorized.
Henry James said, Kipling strikes me personally as the most complete man of genius, as distinct from fine intelligence that I have ever known.
Very good. With praise like that, you can understand why Kipling won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1907. In fact, he was the first writer in English to ever win that prestigious award, and he still holds the, honor of being the youngest ever recipient.
Listen to each conversation, then choose the best answer for each question. Listen to part of a conversation between a professor and a student. Good afternoon, Dr. Tyler. I was wondering if I could have a few minutes of your time. Certainly. John? John Hughes, correct? Yes, sir. What do you need, John? Well, Doctor, I wanted to talk to you about the grade that I received on the midterm presentation. Okay, let's see. Hughes. Here it is. I gave you a C. Well, that's why I'm confused, sir. You wrote an A on my paper when you handed it back. Ah, I see the source of confusion. It was a joint presentation. You got an A, but your presentation partner did not show up and he received an F. It averages out to a C for each of you. Pardon me, sir, but I don't see how that can be fair. I agree, John, but the partner grade policy was clearly stated when I assigned the presentation assignment. Number 1. Listen to part of the conversation, then answer the question. You got an A, but your presentation partner did not show up and he received an F. It averages out to a C for each of you. Pardon me, sir, but I don't see how that can be fair. Why does the student say this? Pardon me, sir, but I don't see how that can be fair. Listen to part of a conversation between an advisor and a student. Mrs. Allison?
Yes. Are you Donald Trenton, my 4 o'clock appointment?
Yes, ma'am. I have something very important to ask you about.
Sure. That's what I'm here for.
Thank you. Well, it's like this. Last semester, I was working part-time at a bakery, mostly on the weekends and during the afternoons.
It says here in your file that you are receiving financial assistance.
Right, but my assistance has been canceled because of the part-time job. They said I made too much money to qualify for assistance. It was just some extra pocket money. There is no way I can pay for school, food, housing, not on what I made from part-time work at a bakery. I don't know what to do.
Don't worry, Donald. We can straighten this out. To begin with, I need you to bring in a statement showing what you earned from the bakery.
Number 2. Listen to part of the conversation, then answer the question. Yes, ma'am. I have something very important to ask you about.
Sure, that's what I'm here for.
What does the advisor mean when she says this?
Sure, that's what I'm here for.
Listen to part of a conversation between an employee and a student.
It looks like we have a small problem here with your classes for next semester.
What? Where? What's the problem?
Well, you see here, this overview of the Holocaust class is an advanced history course.
Yes, I know. I'm a history major and I plan on focusing on the Holocaust.
Well, you are only a sophomore. You would need the signed consent of the professor teaching the course in order to register for it.
I see. Professor Tatum is teaching it. He told me I could take it, but I guess he didn't know he'd have to sign for me to register. I can go by and get his signature after my 3 o'clock class. Would it be okay if I came back around 4:30? Number 3. Listen to part of the conversation, then answer the question. Yes, I know. I'm a history major and I plan on focusing on the Holocaust.
Well, you are only a sophomore.
Why does the employee say this?
Well, you are only a sophomore.
Listen to each lecture, then choose the best answer for each question. Listen to part of a lecture in an engineering class. Okay, take a look at this next slide. Can anyone name this structure?
Yes, that is the St. Louis Arch in St. Louis, Missouri.
You're close. It's called the Gateway Arch. But yes, it is located in St. Louis, Missouri, as you said. It also goes by the nickname of the Gateway to the West. It sits on the Mississippi River and is the tallest man-made monument in the United States. You can actually fit the Statue of Liberty under its arch, as well as the Eiffel Tower, for that matter.
What's the point in building something like that? At least you can go up in the Statue of Liberty and the Eiffel Tower and enjoy the views of the cities in which they are located.
Well, I don't want to have to contradict you, but the Gateway Arch is accessible from each of its legs. There are trams installed in each leg of the structure that hold 5 passengers at a time. Riding up to the observation area at the top of the Gateway Arch has been described as, half elevator and half Ferris wheel, because the trams have to straighten themselves out as they move up the curved legs of the monument. Number 4. Listen to part of the lecture, then answer the question. You can actually fit the Statue of Liberty under its arch, as well as the Eiffel Tower for that matter.
What's the point in building something like that?
What does the student mean when she says this?
What's the point in building something like that?
Listen to part of a lecture in a paleontology class.
As you should know by now, the Cambrian explosion refers to a period about 530 million years ago in which the Earth saw the very quick appearance of most major groups of animals. Along with the appearance of these groups was also a major diversification of organisms that were already in existence, such as some species of plankton and microbes. Before the Cambrian explosion, most organisms were very simple, composed mostly of individual cells that organized into colonies on occasion. This event still puzzles paleontologists because the appearance of the Cambrian explosion organisms was so abrupt, so out of nowhere. Okay, now those trying to solve this puzzle focus on 3 main points. The first is whether or not the Cambrian explosion actually occurred as abruptly as we think it did. The second point is what could have possibly caused such a rapid rate of evolution, if in fact it did occur. And the third is what the Cambrian explosion would imply about the origins and evolution of animals. This puzzle, though, may never be solved to our satisfaction, simply because studying it is difficult due to the fact that a very limited supply of evidence exists from such a long time ago.
Number 5. Listen to part of the lecture, then answer the question.
The second point is what could have possibly caused such a rapid rate of evolution, if in fact it did occur.
Why does the professor say this?
If in fact it did occur.
Listen to part of a lecture in a biology class.
Okay, now I'm going to tell you about imprinting in regards to learning. Has anyone ever heard this term?
Doesn't it have something to do with birds?
Well, not only birds, but yeah, they are one of the better examples. Ducklings, goslings, and chicks will focus on and follow the first object they see moving once they have hatched from their eggs. Of course, when the baby birds hatch, the first moving thing they see is normally their mother. However, tests on baby birds and imprinting have shown that the young creatures will imprint on nearly any kind of object. Maybe a curious child looking in the nest, or even a non-living object like a brightly colored ball rolling within their line of vision. It might happen to you if you were in the right place at the right time. Imprinting occurs very easily during the first 2 to 3 days out of the shell, during their sensitive period. Okay, now sensitive period is actually an official term used when talking about imprinting. It basically means how it sounds. Their behavior develops at this time, and they are very sensitive to any kind of influence.
Number 6. Listen to part of the lecture, then answer the question.
However, tests on baby birds and imprinting have shown that the young creatures will imprint on nearly any kind of object. Maybe a curious child looking in the nest, or even a non-living object, like a brightly colored ball rolling within their line of vision. It might happen to you if you were in the right place at the right time.
What does the professor imply when she says this?
It might happen to you if you were in the right place at the right time.
Listen to a conversation between an activity coordinator and a student. Good morning, Student Activities Office. This is Walter Schmidt speaking. Hi, Mr. Schmidt. My name is Leslie Downs, and I'm calling about Parents' Weekend. Yes, Leslie. How may I help you? I just have to make some confirmations and ask a few questions. Are you the person I need to talk to about these things? Yep, I can answer any questions that you have. Okay, first I wanted to confirm the room reservation for my parents. Let's see, Downs. Leslie, I can't seem to find your name on the reservations list. Oh, check under McAllister. It is going to be my mother and stepfather. His name is John McAllister. Okay. Here it is, John and Eileen McAllister. Yes, they have room 312 reserved in Sutton Hall. Great, but I have a question about Sutton Hall. My mother was injured recently and cannot really handle stairs very well. Does Sutton Hall have an elevator? Yes, Sutton Hall has an elevator. I'm very sorry to hear about your mother. I hope it is nothing too serious. Thank you, but it's not really serious. She broke one of her legs while she was skiing. She'll heal up just fine, but until then she is a little clumsy because of the cast and her crutches. I'll tell you what, I'm going to see about changing their room to a first-floor room. That way she won't have to deal with the elevator either. We'll try to make her visit here as convenient as possible. Thank you very much, Mr. Schmidt. It's no trouble at all. Is there anything else that I can help you with? Yes, I'm an astronomy major, and my parents will be visiting the University Observatory, and, as you know, that is located 15 miles from here. My question is, will there be a shuttle bus to take my parents there, or will they need their own vehicle? There will surely be a shuttle to the observatory. Even parents who have children here that are not astronomy majors enjoy visiting the observatory, so we usually have a couple of shuttles running back and forth to the facility. Number 1. What are the speakers mainly talking about? Number 2. Why does the activity coordinator suggest the student change the room to the ground floor? Number 3. Listen again to part of the conversation, then answer the question. I'll tell you what, I'm going to see about changing their room to a first-floor room. That way she won't have to deal with the elevator either. What does the activity coordinator imply when he says this? That way she won't have to deal with the elevator either. Listen to part of a lecture in a sociology class.
Soccer or football. Depending on where you are in the world, you can use either name. For the sake of clarity and consistency, I'm going to refer to the game as soccer because I'm from the U.S. Soccer is more than just a sport for millions of people. You can actually call it an obsession. If you watch events like the World Cup or other championship tournaments, you can see that the game promotes a sense of national unity. And that's a good thing, right? Sure it is, in most cases anyway. But there is also a lot of violence associated with the game. Not so much with the players on the field, but with the spectators in the stands. In fact, the problem of violence with soccer fans is so bad that it has earned its own term, soccer hooliganism. Of course, there is no doubt that the mass media has exaggerated the problem to varying degrees. These exaggerations may have even helped the violence around the sport earn the name hooliganism. The media has increased public fear of hooliganism by describing not only violence that has occurred, but also the possibilities of violence. For instance, a reporter will say something like, "A defeat will mean destruction for the city of Manchester." That kind of nonsense. But such rhetoric aside, there is still clear evidence that some of the claims of increased violence connected with soccer have real facts to back them up. Unfortunately, some have tried to explain soccer hooliganism by describing a dangerous group of working-class fans who have all sorts of antisocial and generally negative characteristics. Labeling those who participate in hooliganism like that is to basically ignore the history of the game. I'm not saying that the traditional sociological explanations of working-class troublemakers lack merit in the case of soccer hooliganism, but they don't tell the whole story. Oftentimes, episodes of soccer hooliganism occur because of a core group of individual troublemakers who start off a chain reaction. People that are normally calm and law-abiding get excited and over-emotional at soccer matches, no matter whether their team is winning or losing. Fueled by these emotions, sometimes these regular people get caught up in the violent displays set off by the real troublemakers. This then creates a snowball effect of violence as more people get involved. Before you know it, there is a full-blown soccer riot going on.
Number 4. What is the main point of the lecture? Number 5. What is the professor's opinion toward the mass media? Number 6. The professor explains why episodes of soccer hooliganism occur. Indicate whether the following are related to the reason. Listen to a conversation between a professor and a student.
Professor Tweak, do you have a few minutes to spare? I have the outline for my midterm paper here, and I wanted to get your opinion on what I have so far.
Sure, have a seat. Let's see what you have. Let's see now. You are doing a paper on addiction. Okay, and you are linking the topic with bad habits and people's New Year's resolutions to quit these habits. Okay, I like that.
Good. I was a little worried about whether or not you would find the emphasis too weak for a paper on addiction.
Well, there are different kinds of addiction. Giving up bad habits, many of which are detrimental to our health, might not be as hard-hitting as topics like addictions to narcotics or alcoholism, but giving up bad habits of any kind is a way to enhance one's life. So your topic is appropriate.
That's what I was thinking. These battles with addiction may be on a smaller scale, but more people try to quit something like smoking or try to be more active than those battling addictions like heroin or cocaine or alcohol.
Very true. We all know someone who has tried to quit smoking, but how many heroin addicts do you know? Let's see. Okay, what do you point to in your outline as the main reason why people often fail in their New Year's resolutions to quit smoking or stop eating junk food and so on?
I'm focusing on the proven biological reason for our failure to break bad habits, our addictions, which is that they get wired into our brains. And despite this fact, scientists and researchers have learned some ways around this wiring. So people shouldn't give up on trying to quit their bad habits, for what they need to do is learn to understand how these unhealthy behaviors have become ingrained, and we need to learn the methods of replacing the bad habits with good habits.
Okay, very good. Now tell me, why are the bad habits stronger in the first place?
Well, according to the director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse, the bad habits are so strong because the person with the habit is fighting against the allure and power of an immediate reward.
Give me an example.
Yeah, well, it's like the choice between chocolate and carrots. The instant gratification of the chocolate's sweetness beats out the fact that eating carrots is healthier and will help us lose weight. Seeing as the addiction to the chocolate or nicotine in cigarettes or napping for hours every day when we are not tired is hardwired, we tend to place greater value on the immediate rewards as opposed to benefits that are delayed and take time to achieve.
Good, good. I don't see here where you explain why the immediate gratification is so strong.
Oh, here, on this page. The small bit of instant happiness we get from performing the habit is involved with dopamine, a pleasure-sensing chemical. The production of dopamine that occurs every time we do the habit conditions our brain to want that reward again and again, and it reinforces the connection every time we perform the habit.
Excellent. Okay, now do you include some examples of the methods you mentioned earlier in the outline?
Which methods?
You stated that scientists and researchers have learned some ways around this wiring of bad habits in our brains.
Yes, here. I have some experiments outlined on this next page.
Number 7. What are the speakers mainly discussing? Number 8. Why does the student mention dopamine? Number 9. Why does the professor say the student's topic is appropriate? Number 10. Listen again to part of the conversation, then answer the question. Very true. We all know someone who has tried to quit smoking, but how many heroin addicts do you know? Let's see. Okay, what do you point to in your outline as the main reason why people often fail in their New Year's resolutions to quit smoking or stop eating junk food and so on? What does the professor imply when he says this? How many heroin addicts do you know? Number 11. What can be inferred about the professor? Listen to part of a lecture in a film class. Countless programs about investigations and the agents who conduct them have been produced over more than 7 decades of FBI history. One of the most successful and popular programs about the FBI was the television series The X-Files. The show ran for 9 seasons. The popular program was created by Chris Carter, who had had some limited success in writing for television before. In the early 1990s, the Fox television network was struggling and agreed to give Carter the chance to produce some new shows. Carter drew inspiration for The X-Files from several sources. One such source was a report that said nearly 4 million Americans may have been abducted by aliens. Other sources included the memories of the Watergate conspiracy and a 1970s horror show called Kolchak the Night Stalker. After coming up with the basic idea, Carter wrote the pilot episode for The X-Files in 1992. He encountered some resistance from the Fox network executives over the untested program concept. However, the pilot starring David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson was successfully shot in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada in early 1993. After that, the program was accepted and given a 9 o'clock Friday night position on the American fall TV schedule. Carter started a new company to oversee the X-Files called 1013 Productions, named after his October 13th birthday. The basic idea of the show, as you no doubt already know, was to present FBI agents investigating cases involving extraterrestrials and paranormal events. However, Carter also wanted to deal directly with the personal beliefs of the show's characters. Gillian Anderson's character, Dana Scully, in addition to being a scientific skeptic and a trained medical doctor, was a devout Catholic. In comparison, David Duchovny's character, Fox Mulder, in addition to being an Oxford-educated psychologist and well-known criminal profiler, was a strong believer in aliens and paranormal events. His beliefs are how he earned the nickname Spooky Mulder from his FBI colleagues. According to Carter, Scully's point of view is the point of view of the show, and so the show has to be built on a solid foundation of science in order to have Mulder take a flight from it. If the science is really good, Scully's got a valid point of view, and Mulder has to then convince her that she's got to accept the unacceptable, and there is the conflict. Every fan of the X-Files is very familiar with the arguments between the ever-scientifically rational Scully and the faith-based ideas of Mulder. Now, back to the pilot episode. Agent Scully is reluctantly assigned to the X-Files as Mulder's partner with the purpose of serving as a scientific check on Mulder's beliefs in the paranormal. In later episodes, viewers learned that Scully was actually used in that way so that a group of government conspirators could control and contain the findings of Mulder's investigations. A secretive government official known only as the cigarette-smoking man or cancer man appears in the first and last scenes of the pilot episode, though he has no spoken dialogue and no one knows of his importance to the ongoing storyline. Another central underlying theme from the start of the series was the unresolved attraction the two agents felt towards each other. From the very beginning, Carter thought the show should be plot-driven. He said, "I didn't want their relationship to come before the cases." For instance, throughout the series, the two agents almost always refer to each other in a professional manner by calling each other by their last names, rather by their first names. From the very beginning, the X-Files was lucky to have a talented group of writers who were also able to add to the show in other capacities. Two of the best writers, according to Carter, were Glenn Morgan and James Wong. Their contributions to the first two seasons and the first half of the fourth season were especially popular among fans, critics, the show's actors, and Carter himself. Before their work on The X-Files, Morgan and Wong played an important role in hiring talented supporting actors and crew members for the show, such as John Bartley. Bartley was the cinematographer who gave The X-Files its early dark look, which won an Emmy Award in 1996. In the sixth season of the show, The X-Files moved production to Los Angeles. It was originally going to be filmed in Los Angeles, but according to Carter, they couldn't find a good forest setting. For that reason, Carter decided to film the show in Vancouver. The initial 3 weeks of filming in Vancouver turned into 5 years, the first 5 seasons of the series. The temperate rainforest climate of Vancouver was a crucial element of The X-Files. The climate of Vancouver allowed the directors to create a foggy, mysterious feel for the show. However, as the subject matter changed, it became possible for the production of the show to move south to sunny Los Angeles. Unfortunately, the change of mood, along with the departure of David Duchovny's full-time appearance on the show as Spooky Mulder, led to a drop in popularity and overall ratings for the program. Number 12. What does the professor mainly talk about? Number 13. How does the professor seem to feel about the 6th season of The X-Files? Number 14. Why does the professor mention extraterrestrials and paranormal events? Number 15. Why did Chris Carter face some resistance from the Fox network? Number 16. The professor explains the characteristics of two different characters in the X-Files. Indicate which characteristic belongs to which character. Number 17. What can be inferred about the X-Files?